everyone. It's Stacy with So Steady. I am so sorry we're late today getting on. We had some freezing rain here last night, so our offices are closed, but we are trying to manage what we can from homes. We actually, Melissa and I are both here live today to answer questions and be able to share some updated links and be able to get you going for this amazing class. So this is one of the classes that's built into your Elevate Box Club. So if you were able to go ahead and get in on our subscription club box, then this is part of our pattern card. And we're going to take you through creating your little mini quilt block and quilting it today. So we're going to be using the tools that are all in your box: the fabric, the thread, and the pattern card, and of course the quilting template. So you're going to get a full class here today. This class is also on the So Study University. So if you haven't already, we're going to share a link with you today to go ahead and make sure to get registered for that. We tried to register everyone that bought into the box club. So you'll find it under your My Classes on the university. If you haven't been in there recently, that's where you're going to find all of the education located under your log cabin class. So highly encourage you to check that out as well today. So thank you again for your patience, and sorry again, we're getting started late, but Melissa's got a great class for you here. So I'm going to go ahead and cut over to that class, have her share with you, and then we'll cut in after the class today, and we'll be answering some of those questions live as well. So here we go. We'll have Melissa take it away.
And I'm excited to show you this darling little block that we're going to do. And we've chosen this to be our first project for... Hi everyone, this is Melissa with So Study, and I'm excited to show you this darling little block that we're going to do. And we've chosen this to be our first project for our new quarterly club box. In our very first box, we are going to be focusing on the traditional quilt block, the log cabin. So the log cabin block is made up of a center square, and then it's surrounded by rectangles of increasing lengths. And traditionally, that center square was red, and it was to symbolize the heart of the home in a log cabin, or sometimes yellow was used to represent light from the cabin windows. It's a very warm and inviting block. And the enjoyable thing about the log cabin is the variations that you can come up with by changing out the fabric colors and then turning the block in different directions give you different looks. So there's numerous ways to lay this block out, but for today's video, we're just going to be focusing on doing a little 6-inch by 6-inch mini log cabin block, or we're going to call it a mini quilt. To start, in your club box, you're going to receive this collectible pattern, which I was just showing you. It's similar to a recipe card, and it's going to give you the dimensions and instructions for cutting and assembling your log cabin block. It's definitely something that you want to keep in your pattern stash. Refer back to it often, and anytime you want to do a log cabin project, it's very handy. So we'll be including those in every club box with a different pattern each time. You're also going to get these fun spring-inspired fabrics. They're very bright, but they're also kind of warm. So you're going to give you the backing, the batting, also the thread to assemble this log cabin block. In addition, we're also going to give you our famous Westerly Design adjustable rulers. This is a 7.5-inch one, so it's going to be perfect for doing a 6 by 6-inch block. It's really easy to use, great for cutting strips, keeping everything the same length, same size. So we're going to show you how to use that, and that's also going to come in your club box, so that's a great tool. And then we're also going to show you how to finish your little mini 6 by 6-inch quilt with some Westerly Design templates and give it a fun little look. It's great for gifts. It's great practice if you've never done the log cabin block. So I hope you enjoy this, and let's get started. Okay, we're going to get started here. And the first thing you're going to want to do is obviously prep your fabric. So I have already ironed, and I used a little bit of starch on my fabric to get it kind of nice and flat and prepared for cutting. And then for the Westerly Design ruler, if you're not familiar with this ruler, it's very easy to use. It's got lots of markings on it. Everything you need for your 1/4 inches, 1/2 inch, 1/8 inch. So it is 1 inch to 7 inches to 7-inch ruler. And then you just use these little knobs here to adjust it. And so what I like to do is first do one side and then the other, because obviously you can see it can move quite a bit. So we're doing 1.5-inch strips, which is what you're going to see on your recipe card. So I'm going to go ahead and put that at 1.5 right there. And then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to move this side to 1.5 as well. And then I just like to come back and tighten those up a little bit and just make sure everything lines up. So it should just be even all the way across there at 1.5 inches. And all of our fabric strips are going to be at 1.5 inches. They're going to be at different lengths, but the width is always going to be 1.5. So there's a few ways you can do this. If you like to cut all your fabric at one time, we don't have that much fabric. I want to say, what is it, 4 different colors? So we don't really have that much. So you can do all 4 at one time, or you can do them individually. Typically, if I'm doing them all at one time, I like to kind of just put them together and then come back and get a straight edge that I'm going to use to line everything up. And I do that because sometimes even it doesn't matter how well I try to line it all up underneath, something's still off a little bit. And it might not be much, but when you're doing piecing and you're especially piecing a small project, I like to just give myself a nice straight edge. The other thing is when you kind of cut these all together, you're pressing down all that fabric in it, and it kind of now holds that fabric together for you. And you got a great clean edge. You know, all of those are going to be at the same length. And then what I'm going to do is take I'm going to turn this so I can see it. Obviously, turn it this way. So this is my 1.5 inches. I'm going to take my ruler. And you see this black guide. There's a black guide on this Wesley Design ruler, and that's meant to butt up right to the edge of that fabric. So I can feel it when it butts up. Make sure I'm lined up down underneath. And then I'm going to press on this side, and that's what's going to hold your fabric in place. So as you can see, my ruler is not as long as my fabric, but that's not going to matter. So I'm going to start here. I'm going to get to right here. Keep my blade down, keep it pressed up against the edge of that, and keep going. And there's my strips. They should all match all together, all the same width. And that's a great, when you're doing piecing, obviously, everything starts with how well things are cut. And that's the nice thing about these rulers. They're easy to use. They kind of keep everything in place. You can just glide that along the edge of your fabric there and just keep cutting. So I'm going to cut us out some strips. And again, on your log cabin card that you're going to get, it'll tell you exactly how many strips you need of each fabric. So you can follow along on that card. I'm going to go ahead and finish getting these cut up. I'll do one more here just to show you how easy this is to use. I love these rulers. We have them in numerous sizes. We have larger ones for bigger projects. And we even have a little teeny mini one for little teeny mini blocks. It's kind of cute. So this one's very handy. I actually use this one a lot. And then I think I use my 18.5 inch one we have. I use that one quite a bit as well. So we're going to head and finish getting these cut up, and then I'll be back. So now that we have our strips cut, we're going to go ahead and start cutting them down to the proper length. And to start, we're going to need 2 squares that are 1.5 inches, which is already the width that we've got, by 1.5 inches. So we're going to have 2 1.5 inch by 1.5 inch squares. So I don't need to adjust anything on here. I did want to show you a little bit more about this when I cut the next strips. We still need 1.5. So I'm going to take I'm going to call it the circles fabric. It's very fun with all those colors. And then we need 1 of the orange swirl. And those are going to be our first 2 1.5 inch blocks that we're going to start with for the log cabin. So I'm just going to cut those 2 out together. And there we go. So our next size of strip is going to be a 2.5 inch. So we are going to need 1 of these, and we're going to need 1 of these bubble ones again. Circles. Circles are bubbles. They kind of look like bubbles too. So we're going to cut these at our next size of length, which is going to be 2.5 inches. So I'm going to line these 2 fabrics up together. And again, you can cut them separately since I'm cutting the same length. And if you can get them lined up nice and neat, go ahead and do 2 at a time. It makes the project go by faster. So here's what I wanted to show you, which I think I cut off a little bit in the last video. So now I'm going to go down to 2.5 inches. I'm going to loosen these little knobs up, bring it down to 2.5 inches, which is right there. Again, I'm going to adjust it on this side and then make sure I'm lined up on that side. And it's nice because that block guide against the white etchings on the ruler makes it really clear what dimension you're at. So again, that's really nice. I just kind of make sure they're really tightened down. If you don't have those nice and tight, you can go to cut and this can kind of slip on you. So you definitely want to make sure those are nice and tight. So I'm going to go ahead and pop that up over here. I've got my fabric down. You've also got these horizontal lines right here on the ruler. Press on this side, and I'm going to cut my 2.5-inch strips. There we go. And now I'm going to need my 3.5-inch strips. So I'm going to keep cutting, and I'll speed up my video here a little bit so we don't waste a whole lot of time on this. But I'm going to go out and I'm just going to follow the card, continue cutting all my pieces, and then we'll go to the sewing machine and actually get it pieced out. So now that all our pieces are cut, we are going to piece them together. So I brought my little pattern over here with me so I can refer to it. It's amazing how easy when you're putting this together, you can get confused. I've done it numerous times, and I put this block together numerous times, and I still keep having to refer to the card because I get confused. So it's a nice little handy thing to have. So the first things we're going to do is sew the first two 1.5-inch blocks together. I don't have my iron over here right now, but a little piecing trick somebody showed me is if you put your fabrics together and then you just press them, give them a nice press, it kind of helps hold them together. That way when you're piecing, things don't shift and move, especially with little small pieces like this because they're hard to pin. But again, everything kind of starts with the first two. So if you're off starting, you'll continue to be off as you grow around the log cabin as you put the rectangles together. So I like to spend a little bit of time to get them as close as possible. Obviously, you're not going to get them perfect, but I like to get them as close as possible. And then I'm just using a piecing stitch. I have my 1/4-inch foot on. That way I don't have to worry about my seam allowance. It's going to be 1/4 of an inch. And we're just going to piece these two little blocks together. That was easy and fast to start. Kind of press them open. And I like to press as I go. So what I'm going to do is go get my iron heated up here, and that way I can kind of press things as I go. If you want, it's nice to, when you're doing piecing projects, if you have a clapper, to use your clapper to get those seams nice and flat. You know, the flatter and they are, the easier it's going to be as you continue piecing around this first section. Anyway, so I'm going to go over to the iron, give that a quick press, and I'll be back. All right, so I got those two, or that seam pressed, and I've got my third piece now, we'll call it, which is the 2.5-inch piece we cut. So again, I'm just kind of following this diagram right here on our little card that we're going to give you. And I love that the fabrics are kind of color coordinated that will come in your box. You can kind of just follow along if you get confused. So that is what I'm doing, and I am going to sew my next piece on right now. And then I'm going to just keep building the log cabin block. I will get these pieced, and I'm going to go press, and I'll come back. And we'll just continue on. There we go. So I'm going to go press that, come back, we'll do our next piece. All right, this is what we got going on so far. Look at that. And those colors cute. So we are going to do our fourth piece, which is the solid orange. It's again our second 2.5-inch piece, and we're going to put it right along here on this right side. Again, I'm just kind of following that diagram. Line it up, and we're going to keep going. It's easy as that. Gonna go press. Be right back. So one thing I didn't mention, and I was going to mention is you're going to get this fun little pink stiletto in your club box. And this is really great for when you're doing small pieces. You know, you want to keep your fingers away from the needle. And when you come to the edge, a lot of times it's easy to kind of let go of the fabric. But right at the edge, when you do that, it can make your seam kind of pull away. You can start actually messing up your seam when you do that. So it's nice to use a stiletto if you have one. So you go get that in your box. And we're going to go ahead and get my next piece on and keep going. So let's see where we're at. So I've done this one. Now I'm going to do my next one, which is going to go up over here. Line it up. Make sure everything is nice and even. And we're going to go ahead and piece those two together. Get my stiletto. It's also nice too as you're sewing over seams. It just kind of helps keep everything from getting too many hiccups when you're doing piecing. So I really like it. So here at the end, it's especially nice because I tend to want to move my fingers away, and then that fabric, as the foot is walking, can kind of start walking away from the edge here and can make that end of that seam kind of wonky. So this is a good thing with the stiletto. You can kind of hold that in there and make sure you have a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way to the very end. And that is going to really help with your piecing coming out correctly when you get everything together. All right, I'm going to go press this and I'll be back. All right, now we are onto the blue fabric. Oops, I dropped it here. So that's a really pretty fabric. Again, it's got like little circles or bubbles. Spring, I'm thinking raindrops probably in spring. We are in Oregon here, so we definitely get lots of rain. I was thinking one of the things that's kind of fun about this block as you're building it, I don't know if any of you ever played with Lincoln logs growing up. Kind of makes me think of the Lincoln logs, and those were a lot of fun. Kind of miss those. I never had my own set. I think my brother had them, and I always stole them from him. But they were really fun to build things. And that kind of makes me think about that when you're, but in a quilting sense, you're building a little mini log cabin. There we go. Press this and be back. There we go. On to our next blue one. It's going to go right along here. This really does come together very fast, especially when you have all your strips pre-cut. My stiletto. We're almost done. One more piece to do. We're going to put our last swirl orange piece along this bottom right here, and we are going to be done with our piecing. All right, there she is. How cute is that? So there's our block. All done. Matches our card. Isn't that cute? Love it. Turned out really good. Easy. So let's get started on quilting a design on the middle of this. And I'm going to go get set up for that and we'll be back. All right, so let's get started on doing some quilting on our little log cabin design. So the first thing we're gonna do, we gave you some batting, and also the larger piece of the orange fabric is gonna be your backing. And we did it oversized for a couple of reasons. One, if you ordered the embroidery box, the extra fabric's gonna be good for hooping if you're gonna do an embroidery design. For ruler work, what we're gonna do is we kept it a little bit larger because we're going to use the backing as our binding. And that makes for a nice, quick, easy project as well. So I think looking at the scraps that are left over after cutting, there's plenty of scraps of this if you wanted to piece together and maybe do like a variegated binding around the outside. I thought that might be kind of fun. You can certainly do that. But for today, we're just going to use the backing as the binding when we get to that point. So first off, I'm going to use my crosshair square from Wesley Design. You can see that in there. Oh, it's kind of big. But you can use any marking tool that you have, and we're just going to find the center of our block. And so I just used a little iron off pin, and I found the little center of my block right there. And we are going to be using one of the Wesley Design templates that we put in your box for your club box. So this is actually called the Circles on Quilt Spinning Wheels number 14. And it is a 5.5-inch design, so it'll work really good on a 6-inch block. And it makes this fun little loop when you spin it around and you do multiple rotations. So this is, if you haven't used our spinning wheels before, they're kind of like our Spinifexes, but they give you some fun like flower designs, and that's what we're going to do. And in the instructions when you receive them, it'll show you how to use the template, but we're also going to show you how to use that now. And then again, depending on what kind of look you want, changes based on how many rotations you do around when you're moving the template around. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I have my Wesley Design ruler foot on my machine. I'm going to make sure my needle is centered in the opening of that. I've got my Circles on Quilt spinning wheels. And then also what we're going to do, which I haven't done yet, so I'm going to go ahead and stop and do that real quick too, is put in our thread. So we're going to use this fun blue thread, which I think will look really good on the oranges, to stitch out our design. So we're going to go get that prepped and we'll be right back. Okay, so I got my correct thread in, and one thing I didn't want to miss this step is we wanted to find the circle of that, but we're also going to mark some reference lines. So I'm going to use my crosshair square to mark 16 reference lines. That means I'm going to rotate this template 16 different times, and that's going to determine the number of little petals I get. So I'm going to start with 16. That's what I'm going to do. But feel free to play around with this. We're going to use these templates on the practice panel that we gave you in your club box as well. So we'll be doing some more of this with different rotations, and then also different sizes of our spinning wheels too, which can make bigger petals. So, but for this project, I'm going to do 16 rotations. We're just going to start with that, see what it looks like. And you can always add more if you want to, or you can always, echo some little ones out there if you decided to do that as well. So we're going to mark our reference lines. I've got my crosshair square, and I'm just going to go ahead and mark my reference lines so that I have something to line up when I'm rotating my template. And that's why the crosshair squares are so nice. Again, you can probably do it with any marking tool, but this is very precise. It makes it easy. It's easy to rotate it and mark your extra lines. So I'm going to go ahead and get my lines on here so I can see them. I'm just using a friction iron off, I guess. Iron off the pen. So we're just going to line that up. So what I'm doing now is lining the lines that I drew with these etched lines on here. And then I'm going to fill in these extra slots. And that will give me 16 different lines to line up to when I'm rotating. Uh-oh. Guess I better make sure I'm even there. Let's try that again. All right. That one on here. I can see the blue pretty good on almost all the colors. So I think I should be just fine here. Just going to darken them up just in case I don't have to redo them. So I should give me my 16 reference lines there for spinning my template. So I'm going to go ahead and get my template in place. And you can see on the template here too, we have a reference line up here and a reference line down here. And those are going to be what that you're going to use to line up on these reference lines here. And we also have a little hole down here, and that is going to be for our pen, which is going to come in there too. So this is a little rotating pin. And we're going to put this pin right in the center of that. I like to go through the top first. That way I know exactly where I'm putting that pin. Just going to poke it through our fabric here. Then I'm going to turn around and put it back through the back so that it comes through the front. And it should come right through there. So that is what's going to go on here. And that's what's going to keep our template in place, keep it from moving around when we're rotating it so that our center always stays in the exact same spot as we're going around. So we are going to go ahead and get started. And then depending on if you've done ruler work before, some people like to sew, away from them. Some people like to sew toward them. The nice thing is you can move this whichever way you want to get started, whatever feels more comfortable. So I'm going to do a couple rotations, make sure everything is stitching out good, and then I'll come back and do a few rotations with you. All right, so I just did a few rotations to get started, and I wanted to see if you can see kind of what it looks like without me taking it apart, but you can see them right here. So one of the other things I forgot to mention is that the template has an A and a B on it. So you start at the A and you go to the B and stop, and then you rotate it. And that helps keep everything aligned as well. So like, for instance, on here, there's a couple of my reference lines that were a little off. But if you just keep doing the A to the B, and then I kind of pause at that top too, just a little bit, and that gives it a nice little point there. You're going to come all the way back down, get to the B, stop, rotate the template, which will start it at the A again, and then continue on. And you're just going to do that all the way around. To the B, rotate, and keep going. And again, you can kind of move to a position that's comfortable for you as you're doing it. Take your time. You don't have to go fast. Sometimes it takes a little while to get everything lined up correctly. Back around to the B. And we just got a few more rotations and we are going to be about done. All right, so that's what it looks like. Well, you can see that. I think the blue stands out really nice. So it's just a very subtle design, which I like because in that way you're not taking away from all that hard work you did at piecing the log cabin block. So the colors of your fabric aren't distracting to that. And it's just a nice little floral design in the middle there. So the nice thing about this template, again, is you can do as many rotations as you like. So the more rotations, obviously, the tighter the petals are going to be. The less rotations, the less petals you're going to have. And then it does keep you with that little middle section. So I thought, you know, if you wanted to get even more creative, you could do a little cross hatching in there or some little design if you wanted to do something in there, or just leave it blank and keep it simple. And so we're just going to leave it like that because we're going to show you how to use the spinning wheel template a little bit more with the practice panel. But this is it on the log cabin block. So we're going to go ahead and do the next step, the final step, which is just add the binding and finish this little mini quilt up. There's lots of ways that you can do your backing as your binding, but for me, the simplest way to do it is I'm going to just move the backing out of the way. Just do one side at a time and completely move it out of the way. Make sure I don't cut it at all. Get that nice and far out from underneath there, because what we're going to do is just trim down this batting first. So you can use any straight ruler. I like Donnell's Sew Biz ruler. I use it quite a bit. And I'm just going to line up to the edge there. And what we're doing is we're just getting rid of the batting only, not the backing, just the batting. Come around to the other side, same thing. Make sure that backing is out of the way. And we're just going to cut the batting down so that it doesn't interfere when we're doing the binding. And I just like to use this little tool. There we go. A couple more sides to do. And if you haven't used the backing as the binding before, it is really easy to do. And it's kind of nice sometimes for projects because it's quick. It can give you kind of more of a seamless look if you're not trying to have, you know, the backing or binding stand out. So there's a lot of reasons why you might want to do it, especially for small projects like this. It's great because sometimes binding, I will say, is not my favorite thing. So I do this a lot. All right. So typically from what I've seen and done in videos I've watched, usually you want about 1.5 inches of your backing to stick out. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and fold it to where it lines up just like that. You guys can see that. So just to the edge. And then we're going to fold it one more time. But I like to iron this down. So what I'm going to do is going to go over and I'm going to iron that down. We're going to make our little mitered corners, fold it again, and then I'll show you the last step of the binding. Okay, so here is an easy way to use your backing as your binding. So what you're going to do once you've trimmed this down, you are going to take a corner and you are going to put your corner underneath the back of your quilt like that. And you're going to want to make sure that depending on how long or, you know, how big you've made this, you want to make it to where the corner's completely covered. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And then the next thing you're going to do is you're going to fold these sides in just like this and give that a nice press. We're going to do this side. And then we're going to come over here and we're going to do this side. And you're going to press it to where it's just lining up with the edge of the little mini quilt there. So this is what it's going to look like right now. It's going to look like that. So the next thing is when you go to fold this over and you go to fold this one over, it's going to give you a perfectly mitered corner, just like that, to come back in and hand stitch down, or we're going to machine stitch it down. So then I like to use my little clips. I'm going to press that actually in place so I get a nice little press on that. Everything looks nice and neat, and I'll show you how nice and clean this looks. Super easy to do. So we're going to put those together just like that. I'm going to put a little binder clip on it. Kind of hard to see because I put my binder clip on it, but it's going to give you a little perfect mitered corner right there. So we're going to go ahead and do that on each corner. We're going to tuck those in first. Again, there's quite a few different YouTube videos. I picked this up from a YouTube video. Unless I forget which one it was, I should find it so I can give credit to whoever came up with this great idea. There's a lot of YouTube videos though on how to do this. And there's different ways to do it too. I've seen people do it a number of different ways. This one just seemed the easiest to do, especially when you're working on a little small project like that. So I'm going to go ahead and press those and get them all looking like this, and then we'll go top stitch it down. All right, we're ready to sew this down. So I just put a couple clips on there to hold everything in place, but look how nicely that corner comes together there. Very easy, nice mitered corner. I went ahead and changed my thread to an orange thread, so it'll disappear a little bit when I'm doing this. But that's another thing where if you want to be creative, use the blue thread and do a decorative stitch to finish it off. That's something you could do. Some people like the stitching of the binding to just disappear and not see it at all. Some people like to do like a blanket stitch so it looks homemade. There's a lot of fun decorative stitches you can do if your machine has them. So for this tutorial, again, I'm just going to use an orange thread so it kind of disappears. And I like to start in the middle. So I'm just going to make sure everything's folded nicely. And I've got my thread on here. And then I like to get as close to the edge as I can, just so you don't get that little, the little lip that you can get when you're too far in here. I guess you probably know what I'm talking about if you've done binding before. And I'm just gonna go ahead and start stitching this down. Make sure I have it where I want it. Oh, I guess I should put the right stitch going on here in the middle. Okay. And take a stitch. I think that looks okay. It's kind of where I want it. Back up a little bit, kind of reinforce that, and I'm just going to work my way down to the corner. And one thing I didn't do, which I guess I probably should have done, is square up my blocks. So guess we'll find out how these little corners end up. They should end up pretty good because it didn't seem like it was that out of square. But then again, I didn't take the time to square up my blocks. So don't forget that step. It's an important step. I'm going to close this in just a little bit more so we don't see any gaps there. I use my stiletto so my fingers aren't down here. We're just going to get to the ends there. Kind of back up. And back up a little more. I think I went a little far. Pivot. And you can hand sew that down. There's a little bit of a gap at the corner. I don't think I folded it over enough, but we're not going to worry about that right now. Gonna fold this down. And see that? You can hardly see that right there. It just blends in really nice. If you do have like a nice little orange colored thread, it does work really good to kind of blend that in. And I'm just making sure I'm staying really close to that edge, not too far. Work my way down and kind of get my stiletto. As I get close, I'm going to take my clips off and just kind of readjust the fabric. A little bit of a gap down there at the other end that I didn't care for. So I'm just going to adjust this a little bit better down here. Make sure we don't have that same issue. So you just kind of want them slightly overlapping because that's what's going to hold that miter corner together. And when you come over, then I'm going to back up a little bit, get back, and keep going. You get down close to the corner again. I'm going to stop. Going to kind of refold these together, making sure I'm pulling them nice and tight. So a little bit of finagling because this is such a small little quilt block. I think I got it. Back up a little bit. And come down the other side. Down to my last corner here. Okay. So mitered corner. And we're gonna go ahead and keep stitching this. Nope, I cut back too many. A little bit better. And then we're just gonna kind of go over where we started. The nice thing too about using your backing as your binding is you don't have any start and stop joining piece that you normally have. So it's another plus of doing it that way. I'm gonna cut this little tail off here. All right, I wanted to be able to make sure you guys saw a completed block. So here's what it looks like. There's our design in the center. This is what the back looks like. So this is a fun little, it's a great little gift because you can use it as a mug rug or, you know, put your soup bowl on. Have a pretty little design in the middle. Use fun fabrics. And there you go. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Have fun.
Thank you everyone for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed this and we hope you're enjoying your Elevate Box Club kits, and we'd love to see your projects when you get them done.